We'll get some thoughts, especially with how this first map goes, because there's still a lot to play for here. And again, I think as was mentioned on the desk, Matthew, this is a win and in scenario for the Boston Uprising for knockouts. Yes. They have a real chance to be contenders here in the June Joust.
Yeah, they've been tremendous thus far through the qualifiers, right? 2 wins, just bashing everybody in terms of map differential. So you'd think that this is a win here for Boston, that they could get in a similar fashion, which would secure them a spot for knockouts, but also put them in a position to leapfrog in Atlanta or Houston, who are already in and up near the top for one of the top spots.
And I'm feeling good about this team. It's that old WGS connection that they're able to leverage with a lot of players that have played together in the past, almost like a baby version of the Element Mystic move that the Dallas Fuel made, all right? And we're starting to see some of the potential that setup has. It will be Valentine. I'm 37, stand 1. Gabe Orshi will be in. Of course, we saw a glimpse of Punk last week, I believe. And of course, it'll be Myunbong and Faith, who was our player of the match for his Brigitte play last week. So this team, all across the board, are starting to look really, really good. Don't listen to Watson. All right, he's an AI. But there's definitely big potential for this team.
Well, taking a lot of the data that they had during the May Melee, they were pretty poor, right? One of the worst teams that we had in the qualifiers in the May Melee. We all thought that they wouldn't be as bad, so you'll see them rise up. The leaderboards there, the power rankings by IBM Watson, as they start to rattle off some of these wins, as we think they could potentially do even here today. Gilbilchi in the starting lineup again. They played Punk the last series we saw them, and really that kind of first week. Exclusively on the Sigma, so if we see any type of Sigma play, maybe we see Punk come back in.
Right, and I think the debate is still raging about the best way to sort of play the meta right now. We're starting to get some answers here. For the Paris Eternal, of course, the very recent addition of Vestola, who does come from our Overwatch contenders scene, previously on British Hurricane, and is really highly regarded. So should be looking forward to see what the Finnish Dynamo can do in that flex tank role. Look, the desk kind of highlighted Nagamat having a really good match last week, but I mean, it's only been recently that he started to really turn the tables, on his stats. So this is a great chance for him to continue, much like the Boston Uprising, to show what they're made of. Both of these teams, I feel like they're at that tipping point, right? It could go one way or the other for them right now, and obviously recently, yes, Elevote has to step aside from the roster due to some persistent injuries. So we wish him well and hope that he can obviously work on rehab and quickly make his way back into the league.
Yeah, and we'll see how Paris does with Vestola in the lineup. I know when they ended up losing Neptuno, they put in Dridro, and it kind of gave them a little bit more life, right? You really like the support line now. Khan has been a beast. And Don has been pretty good in the main tank role. So if Vestola can come in, pick up where Elevote left off, maybe even elevate them a little bit more, Paris really starts to become a threat to a lot of teams.
Yeah, this is a really intriguing match to kick off our, I guess we'll call it a super week, because we have an extra day of matches. We have a ton of Overwatch for you all this week. What a brilliant way to begin. Still many questions hanging over both of these teams. Do the Boston Uprising, have they reached that critical mass? Have they made enough of those key changes now to catapult them into the top echelon of Overwatch League teams? And naturally, a large amount of uncertainty over the Paris Eternal. It's never easy, Matt, to make a big roster swap, midway through the league. And hearing from Avala, she sort of thanks the Cloud9 organization, because it's a move that has to be made very, very abruptly. And to get Vestola in position to play here took a fair bit of finagling. So a lot of work being done on the backside to make this happen. And the Paris Eternal fans should now be excited to see a new chapter for this team.
Yeah, I mean, to get a quality player that quick is a very tough turnaround, right?
Yeah, even we have contracts and red tape and stuff in video games, It ain't that simple.
Exactly. It's not that easy. So big props to the Cloud9 organization, then also obviously Paris Eternal being able to find somebody as skilled coming right in. So Boston, they'll end up playing something a little bit different than we saw them the last time out. They were running a lot of Gilbilchi on the Zarya, but the meta has changed, and it's evolved in this way, going over towards the Reaper plus Echo with the Lucio Moira combo.
Yeah, this is a setup, Matt, that emphasizes the Reaper a little bit more than the Winston. Stand 1, in the mirror, tough for Winston to find much. Here, Stand 1 can still have some impact, but it's about, I'm 37. Get him into that front line, get him in position under the protection of that defense matrix, and let him do work. So far, though, the Eternal going to set up on point to start the fight. Very different compositions, which means they also play very differently, Matt. The Uprising want to go together as a unit, a death ball.
Yeah, Paris ends up, they come out with the Wrecking Ball here, so Don can play a little bit more on his own, and Onigod just kind of stationary on the McCree, a little bit more defensive of a setup, so we don't have either of the teams taking the point. So Boston will actually cap point, but this is bad for them. Yeah, they lose stand 1, they lose I'm 37, then Vistola taking out Valentine, so Paris kind of concedes the point at first, but just wins in the overall damage, so gives up 10%, but takes the point back right away.
Well, Matt, these comps want to do two completely different things. The Eternal want to poke, they want to drag the fight out, they want to benefit from the resilience they get from the Ana and the Brigida combo. The Uprising want to try and take like a fight, like an all-in. It's 6 vs. It's my best 6 versus your best 6, and we'll see who comes out on top. But that didn't look good at all for them now, and again, they still have to try and find an advantageous fight here, but they're all knocked up. Huge pile driver there to start the fight, and Onigod gets an easy Deadeye kill from the flank.
And this is what happens with these Wrecking Ball compositions. It's just about displacement. You see Don go in, big pile driver, knocking players around. The Coalescence really being forced out there. Myungbong needed to do it to keep everybody up, but he doesn't last very long. It's actually a Deadeye from the side from Onigod. And now Paris Eternal, you have Minefield, you have the rally here, so you're still in a really good spot to hold point. And I think this is a really big test for the Boston Uprising, because Paris is a team that looked to be on the rise, but we kind of thought that the Boston Uprising were going to ascend and be one of the top teams in this tournament. Right now, Onigod taking out stand 1 first. Now, as this meta has developed, we haven't seen the Boston Uprising. We saw them the first week play the Justice, and they played Toronto. Two teams, well, with Toronto now, we know, has not been good in this tournament, and Washington, who didn't win a map. So what do we really know about Boston? I think we get our real first test here today with Paris Eternal, and so far it's not looking good.
Nope, the Uprising, you see how terrible their comp looks in a long fight. They sound barrier, but the Eternal can disengage with the Wrecking Ball, Dridro, and the Rally, and they just wait for the sound barrier to dissipate. They've already won the fight by that point anyway. Now I'm37 needs to get some value here with this Death Blossom. There will be a Diva to contend with for the Reaper on the point, and a Deadeye. That could be a little bit of an issue to wrinkle in the fabric here for the Uprising. They need to try and make their way through now. Duplicated McCree with the Deadeye, and Valentine takes Khan down. A lot of the healing now for the Paris Eternal has gone away, and with Dridro nanoed and still taken down, the Uprising's target focus yields results, finally.
You do have some picks coming in here towards the end. You have a duplicate here for Naga if he wanted to use it, as Don has gotten out. He actually has to use it. He's so far behind. And that's going to be Don coming in with a pile driver. They want to fight this with players coming back off the spawn.
There's an extra tank here as well for the Paris Eternal. Now they have 3 of them in play. Naga goes for the duplication of the Winston, and Faith gets rolled. Back to the point he goes. Now the Eternal don't have control of the point quite yet, but Stan 1 is in a very compromising position. He's surrounded and removed by Onigod. The Uprising thought they had a chance to stave off the Eternal here, a chance to breathe in this round, but it's cloying. It's absolutely smothering the pressure that the Paris Eternal are applying. And that'll be Boston with a composition that's completely reasonable, makes ton of sense. Everyone's playing it right now. The Eternal come up with something a little bit different. Boston Uprising, the sound barrier barely keeps them in the fight, barely keeps them stalling things out. And that overtime won't be long. Gabush is going to be desuited here, and this is a funky team composition map from the Paris Eternal, but it completely punishes the quote-unquote standard setup for Boston.
Right, and what do? You dive onto a Brig on a McCree. You have the Diva there with the defense matrix. You're going to take a ton of damage. And obviously there's not really a disengage there for the Paris Eternal, but it's almost more of just Don just knocking these players everywhere. Even when they were trying to get any type of progress towards the point, just knocking players all over the place on Wrecking Ball. Paris will go to a double shield comp here. Aresis, Sigma. We'll see if Naga stays on the Torb. We do see people play Torb here. You play Torb McCree if you wanted to. That's almost a last year
very
composition. Yeah, very, very defensive. And then they also have the Batiste.
Well, outlast and outshine seems to be the plan for the Eternal right now. Another composition that's really predicated on just dragging out a fight. The Uprising definitely have an expiration timer when they make these engagements. And That's a turret down for Valentine. And yes, the Uprising have no choice. They have to go forward all the time. They need to first get through the Immortality Field. They do well to section Dreedraw off there. He can't get back through the doorway to the rest of his team. There's the Immortality Field now drawn out, but with 5 players to work with, the Eternal can't use that Immortality to clap back at it at all.
So these are the reasons that this composition that Boston's running has kind of won out over some of the other things that we've seen run. It pretty much, if you run this composition well, and you know, you don't want to say to perfection. Nobody's running everything to perfection every time, but this composition played at a high level beats pretty much all of the other ones, right? It's just, can you play it at a high enough level consistently? Because against the composition like Paris is throwing out, so much survivability. You know, you make one mistake, somebody gets picked off, you're done for. But you see how effective it is when things are rolling, though.
Absolutely. It's as close to dive, Matt, as we're going to get in this day and age with Overwatch. Really is about getting in the enemy team's face, picking off one of those individuals, ideally a support there. You saw Dan going down first. That's as good as. Means only one shield and the double shield set up, and really I'm37 and Valentine are unperturbed by barriers. They want to play close, or in the case of the Echo, play above and behind them. So it's a Gravitic Flux here online for Vestola. Khan has an an Ant Matrix rather, so that's probably the combo here. Ant Matrix, ooh, a little narrow, that viewpoint there for Khan.
Yeah, I mean, just buys him a little bit of space. And you have stand 1 here with a Primal Rage. Primal Rage, Death Blossom. You're going to end up with a sound barrier here. They're just trying to find one player a little bit far out of position.
Okay, so that is going to be Molten Core.
They disengage.
The Uprising need to back away. Almost caught something else there. Self-destruct. Oh, it gets Naga. That's exactly what you're looking for. Now that Death Blossom doesn't have to be overly gainful, I'm37 can just dip out of that Gravitic Flux. And that's another one fight for the Uprising now. They will invest further. They go for the Coalescence here. Myunbong feels like he needs to dig a little bit deeper for whatever reason. The Uprising in our one fight territory.
In the composition for Boston, you mentioned it kind of plays a little bit more like Dive. It almost plays a bit more, at least in my opinion, like kind of Goats, right? Where you have the Moira Lucio speeding everybody around, the Reaper's just like a shotgun. You're just kind of ramming into the other team. And then just the echo damage is so massive. You see an Immortality field here that Valentine's able to put down. Help the team as they give up the point. They're going to try and push forward, get these kills, and then double back for the point.
That may not work out that way, though. Valentine realizes that his team is down to 4 right now. Okay, Myunbong, another Coalescence. He gets him every single fight. Incredibly efficient healing coming out here. And remember, if you're on the back foot in a fight, you're probably charging Coalescence faster because you're going to do more healing. Biotic Orb deployed. The Uprising retake, that's not supposed to happen for the Eternal, but they're playing a less mobile comp. They have to stick together, and so in defeat, they group up. Not ideal. Paris gets shunted off the point.
I mean, Myunbong uses the Coalescence and comes out, gives some healing to stand 1, who's basically back at a Primal Rage, and he's up at like almost 35-40% already. So you see how effective it is playing in that the pseudo death ball with the Moira in play. The Coalescence obviously great for the healing, also pretty effective for the damage, especially with an Echo in the sky. So now Paris decides they're going to mirror. This is where we've kind of gotten with the meta with a lot of teams, where they'll mirror this, or teams really kind of commit and play the a Risa-based comps, whether with a Sigma or a D.Va. But this seems to be where we're headed, towards a mirror of these compositions.
Creditor is true, Matt. This is the third distinctly different type of team composition that the Eternal have played on this map alone. It is going to be, yeah, as you put it, maybe more goatsy, maybe more brawl-esque, as the teams want to try and, make use of that. Onigod gets burned down awfully quickly. Defense Matrix wouldn't have protected him from the focusing beam anyway. And again, that echo difference is something that the desk highlighted as such an important factor to play for when you're in this mirror.
Valentine already at 55, it's going up so quick with how much damage you'll put down.
Counting with
the sticky bombs. Yeah, I mean, it's insane. Look, we do enough counting here. I don't need to count anymore, but Coalescence comes in for both teams. As you see how brawly and just long these fights can go. Just so much sustain. With the Moira, the Reaper, even Echo, right? Being able to kind of fly in the sky with no hit scan on the other side.
Right.
The fights just go for so long, and That's why you see so many ultimates just kind of thrown into these fights, because you build them up so fast. It almost is inconsequential.
But it's a ton of healing in these setups, right? A ton between the Moira and the Lucio in close quarters, but it's still not enough to deal with close-range Reaper damage or the burst like that from Echo. I mean, in fact, 3 healers probably wouldn't be enough to deal with that. So these compositions look like they're really safe and they're very robust, a lot of healing. But you can still lose a player in an instant if either of the DPSs get close enough in the case of Reaper, or in the case of Echo, just hit the stickies plus focusing beam. You can't really save anyone in those situations. So it's still very volatile despite all this healing. Duplicate. Valentine's a diva now. There's going to be another one as well. Naga going to follow suit and copy the diva. Self-destruct here from Valentine thrown up. He's going to chase down these players. Only God almost falls there to a remake. I think he has to TP away, but Myunbong catches him with the Coalescence, Matt. Khan's going to go for one of his own now, but they're going to be down a player again. It's the Eternal playing without Only God. Less than ideal to say the very least. And with Naga out of the picture now, we're just in cleanup.
And we've seen Naga have really good performances on the Echo, but Valentine really dominating the Echo matchup thus far. So Boston, you're going to be in a scenario where you probably only need to win one more fight to be really good about putting this away. Some chip damage comes down. Myunbong just getting closer towards another Coalescence. You're going to be like Coalescence, Primal Rage, Death Blossom yet again here for the Boston Uprising coming into what should be the final fight.
Coalescence is huge here. Yeah, you pop that straight away if you're Myunbong. The quicker you use it, the quicker you get it back. Dridro goes down there. The Eternal had to touch, Matt. They were so desperately trying to get to the point that they split their composition and allow some of those squishier targets to get picked off. Obviously, losing Dridro first is really less than ideal. And that'll be the Boston Uprising. Finally get that mirror setup they want, Matt, and they do look better when it comes down to that Echo Reaper setup.
I was going to say, this is pretty scary for the Paris Eternal. Boston, they didn't look great on the first point here on Nepal. But ever since then, and Paris had to kind of match this type of composition, the fights weren't really close. Boston just absolutely dominating it. So does Paris have some kind of other composition variant with a Wrecking Ball or maybe something else they can go to on some certain maps? Or are they going to just play this mirror better in the future? I think it's a real big question for Paris for the rest of the series.
Yeah, that's true, Matt. I'm pretty sure that Eternal fans are looking for something a little bit different than just that standard composition. So stick around and see if there's a little bit more in that Paris bag of tricks.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by T-Mobile, America's largest and fastest 5G network. Set your sights on the competition with T-Mobile. And by Indeed. We help people get jobs. The Overwatch League is brought to you by Coca-Cola, the official refreshment of the Overwatch League, and by IBM, the official cloud and AI partner of the Overwatch League.
And you better believe the Paris Eternal will be calling upon this individual to give them a bit of a boost after a rough map 1 in this series. Naga, as you can see, I mean, he's been one of Denmark's top players for years and years back when we were, doing the World Cup, 2018-2019 representative. And of course was a Gauntlet finalist last year. So, the time is right for Naga to really start to shine here in the Overwatch League, Matt. And unfortunately, so far, he's been in the shadow of Valentine after that first map. Primarily when we were looking at those sort of Echo head-to-head scenarios on that third round.
I would also say it's difficult to look good on the Echo when your team's just kind of getting blown out, right? What is he supposed to do when he wants to go in with his tanks, really kind of cause chaos from up above, and they're pretty much dead before they can even get anything going, where Valentine has full reign of the sky, able to go wherever he wants. So we'll see. I think it's just more of an overall team thing for the Paris Eternal here as we move into Volskaya. I do think they're going to need to play that comp significantly better, though, to match Boston.
And this is the kind of map where we have seen teams try and experiment a little bit here. We've seen Zarya brought in for sort of defensive Winston sort of double bubble setups. Plenty of Diva in recent times. Obviously, as this is the only assault map in this series, you don't expect to see Temple of Anubis today from either of these two teams, so you don't get to see if anyone tries to make the old Junkrat happen again. But you can see from Boston's composition, they're pretty set that this is the way to go.
I also think you get into a situation where you're almost, the way Assault is, you're almost forced to play it because you don't want to make like wholesale changes. Let's say you came out with a double shield Ashe type of setup, and then you're obviously going to have different supports. If they take point A and you want to make a change to this for point B, you are so far behind, you basically give up the whole map. So you almost have to come out on this if you feel like you want to play it at all. And it looks like, at least at the start, Paris hovering over a comp similar to the one that they played on Nepal. We might get some changes, though. Ooh, okay, so the Roadhog composition. This is something that Cuss has been wanting to see. Seoul Dynasty, Gesture, insta-locks the Hog. The Hog with the McCree. This is kind of like a... Remember when we saw them run the Wrecking Ball? This is even harder to dive. You do not want to be diving face first in a Roadhog.
Hog's also just really annoying to deal with in this composition. You don't have Discord Orb, you don't have Biotic Grenade for the Uprising, so your tools to normally shut down the health tank, the damage spun to his Roadhog's a bit limited.
You also do things like that, where you force mistakes. That is a hook on the Vistola, but then you have... no, that's a hook onto Gilshi, but then you have like the players following up, and you're able to get one out of that. So Roadhog just kind of forcing commitments that you may not exactly want if you're the Boston Uprising.
Yep. I think for Boston's composition, Matt, killing the Roadhog outside of Reaper doing it is just more trouble than it's worth. You spent so much time on it. You saw that, the Uprising able to get rid of Dart in that fight, but they've essentially already lost because of the forced displacement that the Hook imposes on them.
Yeah, if you saw how Boston's playing, like they're playing a little bit slower around the corner. They really wanted to coordinate the engages. Somebody gets hooked, you have to react, or else you're just going to give that player up. And you may end up saving the player that gets hooked, but what about the other player, or the secondary player that comes in? That time I believe it was Faith who got taken out, which is their whole disengage is Nago used Duplicate, and they're already going to take out Valentine.
Yeah, and that's a hook on Valentine. Matt Dunn's going to find himself a second one here in the Boston Uprising. They knew what composition they were dealing with by the time we got to the second point, but they knew they had no choice but to stick to their guns and use the ultimates they've been able to build up. Unfortunately, those get absolutely crushed. Valentine doesn't get a chance to duplicate a Diva. The Eternal had two of them, so they forced double self-destruct situations anyway. That is extremely one-sided, and Paris is gambit on this composition. It really pays off.
when Paris plays some other different types of comps and not the mirror, that's when they've looked the best. You know, take out the round with the Orisa Torbjorn, right? That didn't work out on Nepal. But the round they ended up winning was like a Wrecking Ball-based composition. And then here, just a lightning fast time playing the Roadhog comp with the Roadhog is the main tank and then D.Va in the off-tank role. 4 minutes and 57, the time bank is enormous here. I mean, even if Boston sped run the map, you almost can't do it faster. What do you play now on defense? Okay, so they'll end up coming out double shield with the Widowmaker. So this is a little bit interesting. I wonder if Boston makes some changes, potentially thinking there's like the Roadhog on the other side. Like, you're so successful with it, like maybe you run it again. Is their thinking? They do have the luxury to make some changes though, right? Gilbolshi probably goes out of the spawn, checks, and then they go back and make some adjustments.
So it's annoying, I guess, for the Uprising here. This is done, by the way. I think it's a hook on Echo that starts this off well. I mean, he's already zoning all of the Uprising Matt into that top room. And the hook comes out, they decide to go, but it's still not a great fight for them to pick.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to go anywhere near a Roadhog. It's especially with like a Winston-based composition. You don't have like a Zarya bubble. Defense Matrix come through. Hog just kind of vapes and then walks away. It's a great look at that Venom Mine on the back side of the door. It won't do anything as everybody moves to the opposite side of the map.
Yeah, the double shield setup is one that you can exploit a little bit more, their compactness at least, but the Uprising maybe don't account for the fact that only got is playing as a loose end here on the Widow, which not a huge surprise, and that's a nasty, nasty vertical shot there on IM37. Really, I mean, IM37 didn't have much to do there either way, but
I love the way he
like
hits that and then just kind of casually like goes about what he's doing. Like any player on the ladder or it like would have just celebrated out of control. I mean, 2 kills straight back to back here, and then the jump shot on IM37. This last one was pretty sick.
You see that the Uprising actually try and take that fight out of line of sight of the Widowmaker. They just can't do it forever. The Winston bubble doesn't last forever. The defense matrix doesn't last forever. Only God's just too good to be shut down by that positioning decision. So, duplicated, self-destruct, thrown to the front right side. That's beautiful, yes. Faith and IM37 taken down by that. Naga drives the bomb into the ground at the top of the bunker. So it sort of grinds along. It makes it really hard to spot where it's going to come out on the other side.
And now this kind of raises questions about, like, Boston, right? They're able to run this composition. They ran it well against that one Orisa comp, but really they looked great in the mirror. But they don't seem to be able to play this and really kind of understand who should be their target here, what they should try and be doing. Right now you have the Orisa set up on the left-hand side, the Widowmaker controlling that top right-hand high ground. You dive the Widow, you're going to give up so much damage, just that you're going to take going in, and then also the Orisa. This will be a dive that starts here for Boston. They go in deep. They want to try and make a play for the supports, but they're nowhere close. Junior just goes up in the sky. Khan has the Immortality Field and the Amp Matrix. Another failed push here for Boston.
I mean, Matt, here's the problem. The Boston Uprising want to take fights out of the open so they can avoid the purview of Onigod, but that makes them more susceptible to Naga, playing with those sticky bombs in close quarters. The Uprising are forced to be compact, so they're going to be weak to one of these DPS heroes regardless of the way that they try and approach these fights. There's a minute and 16 seconds left and not much time for the Uprising to rack their brains.
Yeah, and if you try and dive and get close, you're going to be walking into the Gravitic Flux here, so...
Not much of a win here. D.Va duplicated. Stan One knows he has to deal with Naga at some point. They're able to get him out of the mech there without allowing Naga to have a free self-destruct. Quite crucial there. Here's that Gravitic Flux we knew they'd be walking into, though. Sound Barrier is going to help them. And Death Blossom, yes, that's why they were looking for a close quarter fight. They get that. And only got to spend much of this fight on the outside looking in, just as the Uprising intended.
And Boston wins this, but is it odd that I still say this is great with a Paris Eternal? You force Boston to use all of the ultimates here. This gives you free reign to just switch everything here, going into point B. And you see just that. It looks like Onigod going to go over to Kree. I wonder if they stay on the Orisa. If you play Orisa here with the D.Va, we've seen teams do that in the past. I believe he gets actually on a race out of the Gravitic Flux, and then the Death Blossom up the stairs.
I mean, you have everything you need. You probably don't need to save the Wraith Walk defensively. You need to end the fight early. All right, only got to use a lot of commotion up above him there. Doesn't land the flash, but Valentine, well, we'll call that a failure to launch. 5v5 as Dridro is picked off as he tries to move out of spawn. The Uprising are really trying to punish the nature of Eternal on this control map. Want to try and split them up a little bit there, and only got it's playing a little bit towards the left-hand side. He has to wrap around now and join his tanks at some point, otherwise this happens. He's getting dove on, and eventually he's taken down, but he buys enough time for Naga to find that stand one kill. Getting Winston down is huge here. Really hard to exploit the positioning anymore of the Eternal, and Naga deals with Gaebushi in the backline.
And they just have to go so deep to try and isolate a player, Boston. Like, Onigod is a great dive target, playing McCree, but he's set up on the high ground. He's got the Brig there. You have the halts you have to deal with, Immortality Field. And then it's also just difficult to get everybody into that position. You saw Boston, they had to take everybody up from the attacker's point of view on that top left high ground and just kind of speed all the way across to the bridge in the back. You're able to get 2 ticks out of it, but still, it just takes so long to get anything going.
That's defensive, if I've ever seen it from Onigod. Trying to buy some time for the Eternal to get back in order. Milmong has another coalescence as he's going to pretty much every single one of these fights. Halt to try and slow things down. Milmong going to reposition to the left-hand side, play the off angle with the coal and make sure he has full line of sight of all of the teammates who would need healing here. A self-destruct one after another now. Milmong has to use his fate to try and avoid it. Naga is knocked out and duplicated and taken down.
He gets a little bit too aggro there. He actually was trying to go for a remech kill after throwing in the self-destruct. The Supercharger here just buys time. You can't dive into the Supercharger here. If you're Boston, now the rally here for Dridro and the Paris Eternal.
Only got able to get rid of Valentine early in the fight, though. He was close to another duplicate. With that off the table now, things get a little bit dicey for the Uprising. Death Blossom from Mime 37. Immortality Field was enough to shut that down. The Eternal, again, they really want to play slow. They want to play safe. They want these long fights, and that Immortality Field really helps them stave off that, I guess, the impetus, the thrust of the spear from the Reaper.
Well, you're already so tanky. It's really the rally that keeps everybody so topped up during that. I mean, think about D.Va, Orisa, Batiste, McCree with the rally armor and Immortality Field. Where is the damage coming from to take those players out? I mean, Onigod is so good on the McCree, and really all the McCrees at the Overwatch League level, to be honest, are so good that you have that much sustain and that much support. You know, a flashbang in a headshot, you should be able to at least go with a trade or at least 1-for-1 there.
You can't play any more defensively than Onigod is right now. He's basically sat in spawn because he knows the Uprising are coming for him. Valentine gets taken out of that duplication there, but Stand 1's Primal Rage is able to get some value. Okay, I thought that would have been a bit nasty there. Valentine probably hoped so as well. Deadeye, Onigod's able to get rid of Gaebushi there, rather. The D-suit and the unduplicated Naga leaves him pretty bereft. But Onigod's able to bring up the reinforcements here, and the Paris Eternal, you cannot play more defensively than they just did, and that is how they get the victory here against the Uprising. Start off with a wacky comp that works, though.
And Boston not able to beat it. I think what's going to happen in this series is we're going to really see the maps and which maps come into the series really depend on the outcome. You know, Paris is forced to play that mirror. We've seen Boston really be ahead, but when Paris can get creative and play different types of compositions, you know, with the Orisa, Roadhog, you know, Wrecking Ball, that's when they look like their best.
Yeah, so the biggest question that leaves us with, Matt, is can the Uprising be creative? These players have existing synergies. They know each other well. Can the Uprising make an adaptation here to deal with this plethora of different compositions the Eternal are throwing at them? Don't go too far, everybody. Map number 3 is coming up.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by T-Mobile, America's largest and fastest 5G network. Set your sights on the competition with T-Mobile. And by State Farm. For auto, home, or renters insurance, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. The Overwatch League is brought to you by Cheez-It Grooves. So much flavor, it's a mind crunch. TeamSpeak, the official voice supplier of the Overwatch League. And by NetApp, the official data management partner of the Overwatch League.
That's right, everybody. We've been loving your submissions to our Overwatch League fan art gallery by Coca-Cola, so keep them coming. That's all I can really say. Again, Bernie Sanders meme. I am once again asking for you to, get your favorite Overwatch League player down on print or in marker or however you produce your art. I'm not an expert at these things, really. I just enjoy it. I'm a patron. Matt knows how it's done. If you can depict them enjoying a cold Coca-Cola beverage, that would be great. That'll be get your chance to be featured on the gallery. Submit your art at overwatchleague.com/art/gallery. And that allows me to get all the stuttering out of the way before I have to do the actual casting.
Yeah,
thanks for sticking that at the top of the show.
You can draw them like I drew Carl, which we can talk about after the power rankings with IBM Watson, where you see the Boston Uprising sitting at 13, just on the cusp of being league average, as 100 is league average. Paris Eternal a little bit further down, but you expect that to rise. I think with the way that Paris is currently playing, and we're really coming into the season, right? We thought a lot of people thought London would be the better of the two European teams, but Paris has really proven thus far to be, really far superior than the London Spitfire.
Oh, absolutely. They have looked above and beyond, more flexible, definitely look hungrier as well at times, Matt, I'll be honest with you. Okay, so you mentioned before we went to the break how map selection could really determine the kind of compositions and, as a result, sort of the success of either of these two teams in the series. So let's talk about Nambani, which just makes its way back into the map pool for the June Joust here. Do the Eternal have, as many options as they do on a map like, I don't know, we saw it on the Control map or even Volskaya? Or do you think they have to play a little more standard?
You might here on first point defense have some few options, right? You can play double shield. That's always been kind of a thing on the high grounds and whatnot. As we move throughout the map, though, I feel like their options definitely are more limited. I think also on offense, you probably are tied to some type of composition with a verticality that could take some type of high ground, unless you felt like you could just barrel your way through that top high ground with an Orisa. We have seen like Orisa setups with like a Lucio in the mix that have been quite odd. I don't really like them, to be honest, but we have seen some teams go with like an Orisa, Diva, Lucio type of composition, and maybe that's something that you can kind of barrel through, take a high ground with.
So the Uprising here again, they are absolutely sticking to their guns. For them, it's also probably a proof of concept that this team composition is the superior one, but they have to know that it really hinges on how well they're able to execute the game plan with that setup, the game plan we've been talking about for the last 3 weeks. There's no way they're ready for Symmetra here on point A if only God sticks there. No, it's the McCree. Okay, so it's going to be a Orisa Diva here. I guess maybe the Eternal fancies some more flexibility with Vistola on a slightly more higher mobility flex tank, Matt.
And they'll play with a Batiste and a Brigitte, so they don't want to play anything with like a Lucio. They don't want to try and engage in up to the high ground. Play this very slow. Try and force an error out of somebody. I mean, think about this. A halt, break, stun, McCree flash. The amount of damage, that player is basically instantly dead. And you see how fast Khan is going to be able to build up towards this Amp Matrix. The Amp Matrix with the McCree up on the high ground could be devastating.
The Uprising, though, they go for the re-engagement. They retake the high ground, and Naga is not ready for that by the looks of things. Gableshi's able to roll him over. Still, the Batiste with the amplification matrix exists on the high ground, and only God is well positioned to get value from that ultimate. You see, he's playing his own little off angle here, trying to wait for the Uprising to push up. Boston still have the center delivery here, Matt.
It's so difficult for them to get out of that room, though, without the Winston. They have nothing to challenge high ground. They have to wait until that Coalescence comes into play, and Valentine uses the duplicate, wants to keep this one going for the Boston Uprising.
Yeah, he was looking for Vistola there. He knew that Diva was really the only option he wanted to go for. Only God stays alive super late in the fight, and somehow he gets away with killing Stan 1. He will give up his life for it, but still, that's audacious.
Yeah, I don't think this is enough, though, for Paris to take point. Like Vistola actually ended up using his self-destruct there. So
he did.
You did end up getting 2 ticks on the point here for the Paris Eternal. And if I was them, I would commit to the same kind of composition. I wouldn't change anything up. I would do the same thing. If they get 1 pick, you are good. Especially if you're able to get Stand 1. Stand 1 does have Primal Rage, so should be able to last, obviously, much longer. But you're still in a good position here if you're Paris.
Naga's calling for a turn. He knows there's an opportunity to pick off the Uprising as they tried to take him down. The Eternal a little bit too slow there. Not able to punish that dive, and Dan eventually falls. That might be a result of the Eternal sort of going aggressive in the direction of Gableshi there. Either way, they can't dwell on that one now. They're going to have to get ready for the next fight. Deadeye still expended here by Gonigod, and it's really unclear what he was looking for there. Much in the same way as Vistola self-destructed at the end of that last fight. A couple of these ultimates for Paris are just kind of getting thrown away.
Yeah, now you're in a little bit of trouble if you're Paris. You have to kind of understand the scenario that you're in. A minute to go. You just have the rally here. You know they're going to have double support ults. They don't even really need to use the sound barrier if they want. They can probably just get by with the Coalescence. where maybe your opportunity here is to take a fight. If you lose, you're going to be able to get another one quick. So Don tries to force some type of action, taking presence on the point.
Yeah, he loses his shield real cheaply, though. I'm37's able to just step up and blow it up. Myeonbong with the coalescence there. Naga's going to go down once more. You see Myeonbong saying, go, 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 go forward. I'm37 with the Death Blossom. Well, I think Myeonbong will be satisfied with that result.
It's like I mentioned, they don't even need the sound barrier. They can probably win it with just coalescence, and they absolutely do. Now this puts you in a terrible position if you're Paris. I don't think you took that fight fast enough. You know, a minute, 20 seconds on the clock. You could have just forced that fight really quick, come back here with, 30, 40 seconds or so. And you leave yourself in a desperation scenario now. And who even touches the point?
I mean, you're playing from main again, so probably your Orisa, if you can move up. There's not too much poke on this composition for the Uprising outside of the Echo, so it's Vistola. Okay, so they're going to use Vistola as a stall, and they're going to go for the Out Matrix here, but Dan can't benefit from it. He has to step up as well. They need more warm bodies on that point, but there are none left by the looks. Naga goes down to a self-destruct. He is dying so early in these fights, man. And the Eternal aren't getting value out of their star player in disguise. And that really makes it hard for them in this map. This could be a quick one now, as the Eternal only get 83.8% of capture progress on point A. We talked about the myriad of different setups available to them on this map, but we never got to see them. We might not get to see them defend for much here.
I also questioned the decision for Paris to constantly push, the low ground, go from main. They don't get anything out of that. The whole composition is really based around trying to force issue on that high ground, take position there, and force somebody with a halt into a spot, make a mistake. Then you have the McCree on the high ground with the Batiste. When you go low, you saw constantly Don or Vistola had to go on and touch the point to even get anything going. And then as soon as one of those players is out of position, there's no speed boost to get them back. So the Boston Uprising just dived the back line. And it's constant, and it's just free for Boston. So I think Paris, looking back at that, they may have had a chance. They get very close. I think they probably need to keep going back and testing that high ground.
Paris will, I'd say, I'd rather unsurprisingly play a very similar composition that we saw on Nepal Sanctum. So that double shield set up with the Brigitte. Immortality Field will be there for Khan. But still, regardless of composition or meta or era of Overwatch, it's always a tough position to be in here when you can only really hold on to point A for a short time. We'll have a brief pause here, as this is what happens when sometimes you are playing from the other side of the Atlantic. Khan calls lag spike, but gets out of his seat. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's how you fix it,
flagging
right?
so bad, you stand up, you wave your arms around, and
you get up and walk away. It all fixed. No, but obviously with playing remote, the players, especially if you're Paris, right, and you're fighting, and you really feel like you have a great chance in the series, all tied at one apiece. You want to make sure you're in the best position possible. Maybe Khan's got to go fix his router or something in the other room. Who knows?
Can you imagine if he had to get up and reset his router in the middle of an official? It's probably happened before, I'll be honest with you.
Oh, absolutely.
I don't know.
Yeah.
When I lived in Germany, my internet was pretty dodgy, I'll be honest. But that's a Cologne thing. I don't know, I don't know if it's really across the country in general is pretty, teched up more than most. And they're really, what they're really good at doing? Recycling. Germans and recycling, absolute gods of that game. Let's talk about a different game, though. Overwatch. That's what we're here to talk about, Matthew. This is your head-to-head between Naga and Valentine here. But, Matt, I mean, these stats will lead you to believe, I suppose, that Naga is, really heavily favored in this setup here, but he's dying, first kill in so many of these fights.
Yeah, and I believe these players are, at the end of the day, probably about even in terms of, their skill and potential on Echo, as it sounds like we may be ready to go back to the game soon, but I think both, Naga has really been a standout for Paris. I think really that explosive playmaker that you look for on the team, and I think everybody gets excited about when they watch the team. For Boston, Valentine, obviously they had a rough first tournament of the year, where Echo was a pretty prominent hero in that. So some of his stats are going to be a bit lower, kind of committed to it a lot of times, and didn't really play it that well. So I believe, you know, if you were to probably look at his stats here from the June Joust, looking much better on the hero.
Well, here we go. The Uprising are on the attack here, remember that, and it's, well, not much of the point to really defend here for the Eternal. That's a terrible start to the fight. They lose Dritro so early, they overwhelm the Brigitte, and Naga is next on the chopping block. This guy cannot get anything done in this map. And I mean, the Eternal, they unpause, but it's almost a look of resignation. They know exactly what they're headed headlong into. It's the wood chipper, Matthew. One way or another, the Uprising have claimed Numbani.
Yeah, and in that fight, it goes by so quick, but Paris has two big stuns. They get one onto Gabolshi. They don't really do anything with it, and they actually get a flashbang onto Ein37. They get him low, but don't finish him, and once you kind of use those stuns, you're not able to get those kills off of the back of them or really punish the opposing team in these type of compositions. You see what we just saw. Boston just absolutely roll over the Paris Eternal.
Matt, we're not done with the payload type maps yet, so the Eternal better have something up their sleeves or they're going to lose this series. Stick around, quick break, and we're back for map 4.
Coca-Cola is the official refreshment of the Overwatch League.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but we are on the cusp of diving into our first live Overwatch League event of the year, and of course, our first ever live event in China. Starting tonight, for those on the West Coast, 2 a.m. PT or 5 a.m. PT. Long have we waited. American events overrated. Western viewers debated. Anyway, check that out. It's going to be worth it. And my God, I'm looking forward to just experiencing that atmosphere again, even if it is remotely.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy to even think about, right? When we obviously moved from homestands to online, like we never got to have any of the events in China, right? So to see we
had so many planned too.
I know.
I was going to eat mapo tofu.
It'll be awesome to see. I can't wait to catch that tonight.
No doubt about it. So stick around for that one. But of course, for now, the Paris Eternal are looking down the long barrel of the law. That's right. It's the Boston Uprising here who have really been, very solid when it comes to playing this sort of. I mean, you called it like goats. I called it like dive. In reality, it's actually half because it has 3 of those signature heroes of each here. But look, Boston look pretty well practiced on Numbani, but honestly, it's the Eternal that just cannot get anything started. And they're trying to dive. And we've seen that scenario played out so many times before on Numbani. Here, though, with Punk coming in from Gable, see, though, it implies, Matt, maybe a change of composition, a slight tweak here for the Uprising.
Yes, they have put in Punk to play the Sigma, so maybe some Orisa Sigma for the Boston Uprising. Pretty strong on Rialto. Sigma being able to control some of the high ground here, just really kind of like alone. And yeah, when we talked about those compositions, when you kind of compare it to dive, like I think some of the heroes are like the quintessential like dive heroes you would think about, right? But just the way it's played is just vastly different. Like with dive, you would typically see the Winston go all the way into the back line and try and make a play. Like this kind of composition is just played strictly around the Moira, right? You're just kind of turtled around the Moira. The Echo up in the sky is just kind of finishing players off with a focusing beam, putting down some extra damage. It's really about just kind of barrel rolling. Like, obviously with hero pools, if a Reinhardt was in, you potentially would see this like a Reinhardt in play, right?
Sure.
A Ryan with a Zarya and like a Reaper with a Moira. Like you potentially could see something along those lines. But this time, playing it with the Winston.
All right, we're going to be jumping in just a moment here. In fairness, Rialto is the kind of map where we've seen plenty of teams opt to play a little bit more of that Orisa-centric style. If you're the Eternal, if you're an Eternal fan, rather, you probably expect to see your team play that approach based on where they've wanted to go so far in this series. And it could have something to do with how Vestola's being integrated, and they maybe prefer to play something that's a little bit more. It's quote unquote, I said it too much, but it's supposed to be safe, a safer setup here. But it gets really exposed by the Boston Uprising on Numbani. So, yes, we have Khan has a gigantic. He has a gigantic bug next to him.
Khan is paused because there's a large insect next to him.
That can't be true. He
just kind of like looked out of his chair and leaned to the side. Look, I am not great with insects either.
Wait, why is Don saying in chat that he's from Australia and should be used to spiders?
Because he's talking to Punk. He's
He's
having a go with Punk. It's banter, right? That's kind of how it works. Punk throws a joke out. Don throws a joke out.
Gotcha. They just contribute.
Yeah.
Like it's like a gumbo of banter. Everyone's just mixing it. Gotcha. That's great. Right. Well,
is Khan going to? I mean, I don't want him to harm this insect, but is he going to get it out of the way?
Yeah, listen, it's not really a question of it's not a question of masculinity. Like, I don't expect you just to stand up and like swat her or anything like that. You can handle it however you want. Just handle your pest problem, my guy. I mean, get a tissue.
Khan's
You know what I mean?
I mean, this guy's going through it, right?
I watch it.
Lag spike, bugs. I mean, come on, bro.
Damn.
You see that swing? I mean, that was a.
Is he actually?
That was dude. He threw a right hand. He's been watching the Logan Paul Floyd Mayweather promos. He's throwing those right hooks over the top.
But he's fainting, because he's worried he might actually have to touch the thing. Listen,
No, he
Ladies and
got it.
gentlemen,
He got it.
okay.
That thing is, I mean, he is staring at the ground.
If you're ever at home and you're having a bug problem, first of all, realize they're more afraid of you than you are of them. Probably.
It's true.
In most cases.
Most likely you're larger than the bug.
Yeah, you probably have a size advantage. You're probably in a higher weight class as well. You could probably throw a people's elbow in there and get away with it. That's all I'm saying, all right? Listen, we are supposed to be the apex of creation or evolution, if you will. Probably more relevant to many of you. But still, sometimes bugs get the better of us. Well, in-game, none of those to worry about. It's all smoothed out. We've been doing this for 5 years, Matt.
In this battle, though, Khan has come out on top.
Yeah, congrats to Khan. That is, well, in fact, no, it really just gets you it might get you a respectful nod in Australia. I guess anywhere else, maybe you get a garland and a medal given to you. I don't know how it works out here.
Australia,
Everyone
they have
seems
those
to be so
spiders
impressed.
that, like, they have spiders like crawl out of toilets and stuff. I mean, that's scary.
Snakes more commonly.
That
if the
is-
plumbing, like if the
That
U-bend,
is even worse.
if you can't keep water in the U-bend, then you can get snakes in them. But I mean, or we have the long drop toilets that are just a hole in the ground.
Long drop toilets. Yeah,
it's called long drop.
Can't say I've
Well,
seen one of those.
Don't go spelunking in them, but yeah, I mean, sometimes you have to dig a hole in the ground, Matt. Like, we don't plumbing in the middle of the outback. We haven't conquered that part of the country.
Yeah, I'm not really one with the nature, you know. I kind of stay inside.
Well, Khan's going to have to get outside right about now and face the fury of the Boston Uprising looking to end the series.
Yeah, so we'll see Boston on defense here first. Widow versus McCree. Obviously, I'm 37, going to have the range advantage. Nobody really I can kind of challenge him at that range from the Paris Eternal, but Onion contemplating a little bit of a flank all the way around here. Oh, Venomine catches him out.
I've got the Black Lung Pop. He will need to rethink his flanking strategy. Okay, yep, crouching. You have spurs on your feet, but crouching is what you're worried about. Your knees are going to make you more stealthy, apparently. Clink, clink.
I'm more interested why Paris doesn't have Onigod play the Widow and match it. Like, his Widow is very good on Volskaya. The Urge comes around the corner, takes out Faith. I mean, that is a fantastic pickoff. But they opt to not play, like, the Mercy Widow comp here, and they actually sub in the Brig again. So they've been going back and forth to this Brig to really try and brawl it out. Make this a high, sustainable, not mobile at all composition.
Well, the flank works out, Matt. Only got able to get rid of the Mercy at the start of the fight is just perfect. Getting kill on Widowmaker, yeah, no mean feat. It was relatively close-range fighting. It wasn't anything weird across the map. Constant pressure from Onigot here, but the point's not been taken yet. This could go the wrong way for the Eternal, Matt. I'm 37, gets the pick on the Orisa, and that's where it all begins.
Yeah, it's the Amp Matrix that's huge from Myungbong. They are forced to use like Gravitic Flux as well. So if you are Paris, you get the cart very close. 2 minutes and 16 is a ton of time to work with. And you hold on to some ultimates here. So you're trying to swing the ultimate advantage in your favor. Naga here, just trying to, a little cheeky back cap. This will draw people back though. Unfortunately, they won't have Naga. And here's a Deadeye, doesn't get anything.
Yeah, it's about as covert as a cheeky Nando's. Everyone knows you're going to Nando's. You probably put it on social media. It's not really cheeky at all, in fact.
The timing there from Valentine is huge. I mean, he's able to dodge the flashbang with a duplicate. Now the Valkyrie being popped here to try and keep these players alive through the Gravitic Flux, but Faith will actually end up getting taken out by it.
It's instant death if you're going up against someone like Onigod who could just really punish you if you're hung in midair. Yes, Stan Mon was able to use Fortify to drop back down on the ground, but Faith couldn't do the same. The Uprising here they are, like as we expected, Matt. They bring Punk in, they match the double shield, and the Paris Eternal definitely look like this is where they're comfortable. I think I'm 37 does get a huge kill on that Orisa with the Amplification Matrix earlier on, but, you know, not winning out, I think, against his opposite number, who in this case would probably be the Onigod. Hangzhou for Onigod now.
Yeah, we see the Hangzhou switch here pretty often. Control the high ground is Naga will take out Valentine, so it's another huge pickoff. An Amp Matrix comboed with a Supercharger trying to force Paris back. But look how much payload progress they've gotten. And then, that's a flanking Ash copy. May not been the target there, but hey, you know, 2 kills for Paris. It's right now it's looking like a 3-on-4 scenario.
Still the Orisa in play. So I don't know how much. Yeah, there's not much ingress here for the Eternal. Okay, that's a nice one. Only got huge in this series. My God. All right, Sonic Arrow there on the stairs. He knows that Orisa is there. He can pressure that shield down or ignore her. Go for the backline instead. Gravitic Flux, Darn's able to get out of that one. Vestola does drop down, but Valentine's removed. Only God is causing problems here. Someone has to deal with the Hangzhou, but it doesn't look like the Boston Uprising have the tools to get Only God out of this position. He's so safe here, Matt. And Naga is the one that's dealing death.
I mean, this is pretty consistent with what we've seen from the rest of the series, though. Like, when they don't have to match them, they look pretty good, Paris Eternal. I think, though, this is something that if Paris Eternal were even to win this series, right, put themselves in an opportunity for knockouts, they're going to have to be able to play that Winston-based composition to really make an impact. Focusing Beam comes in. Both those players so low. There's a halt in there, too.
Yeah. Way too much pressure. That's not good either. Stand one actually fortifies in the halt, I think, to get away from that Ant Matrix. Dragon Strike, great placement for Only God here. This is going to cause a whole lot of headaches now for the Boston Uprising. They try and beat a hasty retreat, but Valentine somehow is able to skitter away as Only God trying to focus him down. Amplification Matrix, and Only God is trying to play around it. The halt is going to make that a little harder. Gravitic Flux, they get stand one. That's the first step. That shield will persist for a short time, but Only God's been unleashed, man, and doesn't look like anybody can stop him.
And you know, Naga is going to have the duplicate here. He's going to turn into Sigma, get taken out straight away by Faith there on the Brig, but they're going to be able to get Faith in on 37. This is a huge for Paris. They're looking to sit a great time on Rialto.
Numbong now can't really peek out. Stand one has to step up and try and make it happen. He instantly fortifies. Immortality Field provided. His shield's also there. Good time buying for Stand one. But eventually, he does fall. That'll be the pile driver here to secure Valentine. Won't be able to touch at all. And this is a great time for Paris, Matt.
Mind you, this is Paris with a fairly new player as well, right? I mean, Vestola gets added, what, yesterday? The day before, maybe? And we don't know how much time he's actually had playing with this roster. What, maybe, best case scenario, a week or so? It's pretty impressive from the Paris Eternal, really taking it to a team like the Boston Uprising, who they 3-0 the Justice, they 3-0 Toronto, and they have a week off. But now coming into this week, you thought, hey, you know, like Johnny mentioned on the pre-show, they win this series, they lock in a spot for knockout. Now you lose this one, it puts so many things up in question for the rest of the teams, really, throughout this tournament.
Okay, so if this map is, I mean, Dorado, right? Do we see the Boston Uprising play double shield?
Probably not. I think
so. You definitely feel like
they probably would have left Gilbolshian to play.
Yeah.
Because you would have wanted like the Winston Diva for like high ground control and
play Widow Echo with the Mercy pocket as well.
And they give you a kind of more context of how important this is for Boston. You know, they go the 2-0. They have the 6-0 map count. Now you lose a series like this, their next opponent is the Gladiators tomorrow. You could easily be in a position where you came into this week 2-0, 6-0 map count, find yourself ending the tournament, you know, the qualifiers 2-2.
Right.
And in a spot where you could have won this match and qualified, you may not even make it through to knockouts.
In fairness, at worst, you come out of this series -1 differential for the series, so you're still +5 at 2-1, so it's all right. Still a decent spot to be where so much of the mid-table hasn't had their results decided going into knockouts yet. But this is just not the kind of match you want to lose, full stop. You mentioned the Gladiators, a formidable opponent in the June Joust, awaits them. But that's a good start. Vestola eventually gets run down, just a little disconnected from the rest of his team. And Valentine's in, again, this little flanking position to punish. Dan steps up, though. Only God's able to find one here. Dreamdro second.
Yeah, and this is where Paris wants to fight. With the Brig and the Batiste and the McCree, like they want the Orisa and the Sigma and whatnot to move into them. That's where they want to fight it out. Now, when Valentine is on the flank with Faith and he's putting down damage from afar, you have the Ashe with the Dynamite, and you can have the tanks and, you know, Myungbong just play that neutral game. But when it comes time to step onto the payload and fight as a unit, that's where Paris really wins out. You know, the Orisa Sigma, Brig, McCree, like those are all heroes who excel in the medium to close range.
Naga knows he's getting pressure now. He knows he has a chance. Oh, Onigod appears from nowhere, face dead. He's absolutely mauled by Onigod, who just appears, materializes out of nowhere with a Deadeye. And I think there was a focusing beam on Valentine. He was already low, so that's like an instant Deadeye kill.
That's not bad use of a Deadeye, though. Like,
that's fine.
I mean, how many times do we see a Deadeye and it gets absolutely nothing? You know, being able to take out the opposing Echo, you get the Mercy.
Yeah.
And it buys you time on the clock, right? It's not a bad use.
More importantly, the Mercy has nowhere to go. So the Mercy kill is what's really valuable there. No resurrect possible. And an easy pick off on a main support. You'll have to see that into the back line. That is a duplicated Sigma for Naga.
This is odd. Yeah. I thought Paris, they probably think without a speed boost, they're going to be a little bit slow to push forward. They run right past this, though. I would have liked to see if Paris would have taken the high ground there and potentially tried to use some of those.
Punk's getting slapped around by Dridro that whole time. I think he was the only player caught inside the Gravitic Flux. And yeah, I mean, that duplication selection, maybe not ideal from Naga. He's been a little bit more chaotic in his selections, as we saw in Ash picked as well. That does mean that the Eternal are going to have to give up at this point. Decent fight, Matt. 2 minutes 45. Push back for Paris.
I think, though, if you're going to give up that payload progress, you're not going to catch them on the corner or anybody there. You may as well have wrapped fully, given up a little bit more payload progress and taken high ground, which would have like forced them directly underneath you, would have put them in a really tough position.
Sure. Why fight so close, I guess, and instead of just letting it breathe a little bit and get better high ground positioning. Either way, Paris Eternal have it now. They have that high ground spot. I'm37 switches to Hangzhou. Teams really value the verticality Hangzhou offers on this part of the map and that extra ability to pressure the shield. If you don't deal with that Hangzhou in an obscure location, well, you're not going to have any barriers to stand behind. It's pure and simple.
And I'm surprised that we didn't see Onigod go to the Hangzhou. He pulls out the Widowmaker here. This definitely puts more pressure on Valentine, who has definitely been like the standout damage dealer for the Boston Uprising thus far, but doesn't really give them a lot in terms of shield pressure. Really just denying the angles here, putting a lot of pressure on a Valentine when he goes up in the sky.
Stan1 took a risk there peeking. He needs to be the one to push in a cart forward. Onigod has an uncharacteristic miss on an unshielded Orisa, and he's forced to give up that ground. Still, swings and roundabouts, I guess, as the Uprising lose Punk, and they look really reluctant to push past that corner, and that's Infrasight in play now for Oni.
I mean, this is what they could have done on point A. You know, at the beginning, they could have they let the cart wrap around and they take the high ground, and then they just come down and fight, right? I think they just got a little bit too aggressive. Maybe thought they could catch a player out of position, but now you still control the high ground. Just dwindling time off the clock. If you're the Paris Eternal, it's exactly what you want to do right now. Just drag these fights out. You know, make them costly for Boston. Dwindle down the clock. You have a map complete with 2 minutes plus in the time bank. You don't need to be perfect here to win it. That's a huge pick. You're gonna have to wait now. If you're Boston, what do? You're just stuck on the bridge. Really tough spot to be in.
Well, we talk about, double shield being very strong against poke compositions in general, but both Sigma and Orisa have to set those shields up. For Orisa, she can't relocate it. For Sigma, he can, but it's a real pain in the neck nowadays. That's a lot harder to do than it used to be. So Onigod is just having to be a little bit more patient, but he can still get around these.
And Ant Matrix comes in for Paris up on the high ground. Boston has to kite it. If you want it, I know for Paris, you could drop the supercharger. What are they going to do? They can't cross the bridge as well. Ant Matrix comes in for Boston. They need this just to be able to get across.
That's about as much pressure as Onigod's going to suffer in this position. A little bit of a visit from Valentine, but Onigod returns the favor. It's traded out, though. I'm37's able to find that from extremely long range. Not an easy shot to hit under any circumstances, and unfortunately, it does nothing for the Uprising, Matt. They're still in dire straits.
Yeah, so if you're Boston, what do? You're going to have a Halt plus Dragon. Can you even get Punk in position without Lucio? Like, you may end up being forced to use Rally on the bridge to get players across. The worst case scenario there for Boston is Paris Eternal looking really good to force a map 5.
Onigod really coming into his own now, playing the very comfortable Widow against this lumbering double shield setup. Sam 1 down to half health, and that Dragon Strike is speculative at best. It maybe drives a wedge between Onigod and the rest of the Eternal. I don't know really the purpose of that. Still, Dredro goes down. You can see the Valentine's finally able to get some purchase, but again, it's always comes at a cost. Onigod again picks off Myunbong, so there's only the Brick healing. Right now, Rally is going to be enough, but eventually it's going to take more than the Brigitte's healing to keep them alive. That time is now.
So the picks from Onigod, I was really questioning the Widow pick, but being able to control that bridge, getting Myunbong a few times, it's huge there for Paris as they just wipe the Boston Uprising off of the cart and force a Game 5. Pretty surprising. I thought that Boston would come in and really build off of the 2-0 week, 3-0 in both series in terms of map count. But Paris Eternal proving that they are definitely a force here in the June Joust.
So many of these teams trying to incorporate not just the double shield comp, but also like the Winston Diva Reaper setup. Well, the Uprising only really good at one of those, and I'll let you big brains figure it out. We're going to come back with map number 5. It all hangs in the balance here. Boston can qualify to the June Joust knockouts, make it at least there. But my God, they need to make it happen in the next map.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by T-Mobile, America's largest and fastest 5G network. Set your sights on the competition with T-Mobile.
That's right. For the Boston Uprising, there's a lot on the table in this particular match and the ones to come in the June Joust. And yeah, it's not going to come easy. Not up against a resilient team like a Paris Eternal, Matt. They play double shield, they stand in place, and they tell you to bring the fight to them. Boston, like we sort of said, right, like really good map differential, right? They're +3 over both their 2 wins, but there's no certainty that they're in the knockouts despite that.
Dude, I came into this week thinking that Boston could win this and realistically give the Gladiators a run and finish potentially at like 4-0, right? For either of those teams. You look at the Shock as another contender who could kind of go like 4-0, get above Atlanta or Houston. But now with the way the Paris Eternal is played, you think like, can they even go 2-2? You know, they have to get by Paris Eternal. This is such a huge map for them in the June Joust. You know, you win this, you can guarantee a spot in knockouts. You lose this, you're in a must-win scenario almost against the Gladiators as Galbulsi comes back in for Punk. So the final map in the set will be Busan. So you can play a lot of the Winston-based compositions here on Busan. Some Wrecking Ball a little bit. If you're a Paris Eternal fan, maybe we see them go back to those ball-based compositions. But Nepal very close in terms of the first map in control.
I feel like this is a sigh of relief for the Boston Uprising, who frankly just don't look good at double shield. They don't. It looked rough against the Paris Eternal. And Paris had some nice little variations, right? They find a multiple different opportunities to use different hit scan, right? It was McCree on attack, and then we saw the Widowmaker from Onigod, who just... He is one of the safest players you'll see. Think back to Volskaya, Matt, where he basically sat in defensive spawn, knowing he'd be the first to dive. Here on Control, you don't have the option to run back into spawn and hide and still have some hope of achieving your objective. You have to stand up, you have to fight on the point here, and Busan is definitely you know, an example of a map where you're going to want to play the Winston Diva with the, you know, with the Moira Lucio comps. You're going to want to brawl. It's definitely much more of a fundamental brand of Overwatch. And like we said, lucky for Boston, because they look very good at that comp. It looks like the main composition that they want to play. The Paris Eternal played 3 different types of compositions on Nepal in this series. So they're not set on that. And it looks like they probably, if they could choose, Matt, would rather play double shield.
Yeah, absolutely. And we just got to mention as well, you know, Vistola, this is his first match with the Paris Eternal. I think we were worried when Neptuno left Paris, you know, how do you kind of replace his veteran leadership and just his play in general. And, you know, Jojo's been a big kind of like buff, positive for
the team. But they don't replace that. It's not a one-to-one, right? Because Jojo is on the opposite end of the spectrum in terms of his career age and sort of, you know...
Well, right. I mean, but can Vistola be the same type of impact as that, right? Where, you know, Elevote's a very good player, obviously needs the time to get his wrist right, but, you know, Vistola comes in, very good player from contenders. Like, can he slide into this roster and even be, you know, possibly like an upgrade, right? And then you're looking at, you know, 2 scenarios where, you know, you ended up losing players, very tough. You had to replace them quick. You replace them with 2 players who are really hungry and young, though, and, you know, maybe it ends up being a positive for the Paris Eternal.
Paris already looked pretty good at that double shield setup with integrating Vistola. Different story, though. They're going to have to make some sort of mobile brawl composition work here. Now, this is an interesting setup if we get the McCree, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, you can play some ball here, and they ran this type of composition on Nepal.
On Village.
On first point. No, I think it was Sanctum. They ran it.
Was it? I got you.
Yeah. Where you see the ball goes in, just the display.
I know, it's Shrine.
Yeah, yeah, Shrine. Look how low Faith is. And, it's a huge biotic grenade there from Khan. This composition gave Boston a lot of trouble the last time we saw it.
That's the Reaper difference, though, there that I'm37 can generate. Once the Eternal are involved in a fight, once it's just a no-holds-barred brawl, that's where the Reaper can shine. Still, the 1 kill not really enough to put the Uprising back on the point. But again, that aggression, that defense matrix use is great on Um37. Keeps the Reaper alive, but it only lasts so long. Risu Deg takes Vistola down to about 200 HP, but he's fine. Nyumbong has already fallen. And yeah, this comp for the Eternal looked really good. It's like a mishmash of different looks.
So that time Stand 1 actually went in and tried to dive right on top of Khan. He throws an nade down at his feet, purple stand 1, and gives him a little bit of like the healing back. But then even if you trade that out, everybody else from Boston is in. You don't have your Winston anymore. Your Lucio's not close, and you're having a brick just swinging at you. And you know, Joe's going to have Rally. You're going to have a Nano here. You can Nano Naga. He's got a duplicate. Is Paris going to get above 50% here? A ton of ults.
Safe Deadeye here for Oni. God, down to get stared 1, despite the fact, of course, that Bushi's there. Defense Matrix is not enough to keep the main tank alive. That is an awful start to the fight for Boston. Free bomb.
You get nothing there with the free one. Yeah. You still hold on to both support ults, though. I mean, you hold on to Rally, you hold on to Nano. 2 huge ultimates here. You could go in with a minefield. You have that to stall the point out. Guys, look at this. You got to use the Coalescence. You got to go quick here if you're Boston.
They do, Matt. They get Oni God. That's definitely a key target to remove now. And Coalescence is getting a lot of value, but it took quite some time for it to really start to find its mark. I'm 37 has no need now to spend ultimates. Or does he? Naga takes him by surprise. I think if Vistola had the extra damage. The Uprising realized this fight's not done. This is starting to look like deja vu with the first round. Self-destruct's going to be there for Vistola, who's going to be able to get back in the mech. Valentine, though, may not be able to build his bomb. He does. He'll let it go in a second here. Gabushi doesn't have the same option. He just got back in his mech. And the Wrecking Ball for Dana's a problem. No one really able to deal with it by the looks of things. And only got returns with a Vengeance with 2. Deadeye from a safe spot here. Really tough to shut that down. Death Blossom has to mostly happen behind the pillar because of McCree's presence in this fight. And the Boston Uprising, I'll be honest, get absolutely rolled. Absolutely dominated.
Yeah, I mean, this is, that was not close as Stand 1 gets biotic grenaded there at the end, has to run away. But he can't contribute anything. 100-0 there in favor of the Paris Eternal. Paris Eternal, 1 round of control away. This would be a huge upset in terms of where we thought this day would go. I thought that this would be a match that Boston would win. They'd be able to solidify their spot in knockouts. It probably even took them a little bit by surprise. You know, they thought going into this, hey, you know, Paris Eternal, they've been a little bit up and down, but they have a new off tank, don't know how long he's been playing, and they have come in and really given it to Boston today. So you can run this ball composition again here, as it's going to be the Boston Uprising. They're going to opt to go with the double shield. So usually with the Sigma, you see Punk in play. This time they're going to put Galbolshi on the Sigma, and they're going to play the Ash. So going to play a little bit more to distance. They don't really want to deal with this Wrecking Ball. They don't want to get aggressive. They want to try and put pressure from afar on Onigod. And he's going to play Hangzhou here. So be able to control the high ground a little bit. I thought maybe he would match with an Ash or even play the Widow potentially, but you go with the Mercy who can help you know, Naga up in the skies. This will get rezzed. And you also have the Hanzo to control some high ground.
One thing's for sure, the Uprising are bothered by Paris's composition. They hate trying to deal with this. The composition switch up, though, you can see just how this sort of more compact, resilient composition deals with it.
Here's the thing as well. The counter to what Boston is playing is that Winston, Reaper, you know, base composition that we really haven't seen Paris play that well. So maybe the option here for Boston is, hey, let's play double shield, force them to play something Winston-based, and see if they can beat us, play it good enough to beat us. We haven't seen that from Paris thus far.
Right.
And Don goes right over to the Winston.
Well, Boston lost in the mirror, though. That's also one thing worth bearing in mind. Paris wanted to change their comp to go that way. They looked better on Rialto. Only God knows he's not going to get caught by that halt there. Immediate knockback there. Nanavis Donna was done. Gable, she can't really prevent the Tesla cannon damage with Kinetic Grasp. Still, Immortality Field going to be thrown down now, and that's an Ant Matrix in the back, so that's why Vistola makes himself scarce up on the high ground. Faith, though, backhands Dreedrone the next Tuesday, but Nyumbong is lost as a result, so Vistola's patience really pays off on the high ground. They get that resurrect. Gabushi quickly trying to get back in position, and Faith is punished for that res.
But Naga's going to take out Valentine. He's got a duplicate. You still have Vistola here up on the high ground, and that'll be a duplicate onto the Sigma, so you get another tank in the mix. You could be able to turn this if you're Paris.
Gravitic Flux. Okay, catches Khan. who could probably just nade himself or get healed up by Drudro pretty easily. So this is the Eternal that moved back onto the point now. Naga with the duplicate on the Sigma is pretty scary stuff. Gebushi all alone.
Yeah, and that was a big sleep from Khan onto I'm 37. I'm 37 is actually there with Gebushi, trying to put some damage down on the players in the point. He gets slept though. Kind of a little bit of a turn to the side and a sleep so they don't play the Reaper-based composition. They don't play a Lucio, they don't play a Moira. They'll play the Mercy to kind of pocket Naga up in the sky, and then they'll play the Ana. So you're going to have a Nano here. Beautiful Biotic Grenade as well. That's going to be 4 players getting hit with that. He almost didn't even need the Nano. The Biotic Grenade so good from Khan on the way in.
And it's so easy for Dan to pick those kills off and get himself primal rage for the next fight. The Eternal start slow in this round, but they're in a pretty good position now. They use their support ultimates in that fight. That's clearly one that they feel like they have to invest in order to win. They'll still have to deal with primal rage here, and Boston's composition is quite positional, so primal will still be very annoying for them.
Boston just searching for answers, it feels like, though. With all the changes that they've been trying to make, is I'm 37 now plays McCree. This will be a bongo that goes down. Ant Matrix as well.
Okay, Ristola down. So you see they're done trying to get rid of the supercharger. He does, but there's just too much damage amplification on the side of the Uprising. And Dan drops in Primal Rage, no less. There is a lot of damage here for Boston. It's a very anti-dive composition. Self-destruct there just in time. Naga's able to skip away, but the rest of the Uprising will accost him and remove him.
They get another like 10% out of that though. Stalling at the end, which is really important now. What do you have to work with if you're Paris? Dragon Strike to split some players off. You'll have a Nano as you see how Khan just kind of farming that up off of Dawn. Maybe a Nano onto the Winston after the Dragon splits players off. So Onigod's actually off to the side. He could Dragon through the choke, and then you Nano the Winston on the way in.
It's tough to set the Dragon up to do anything except just force positioning. Myunbong, okay, just in the nick of time. Great whip shot there. Sends Dan skyward, buys plenty of time for the rally to top Myunbong back up. He had to use an immortality field early in the fight though, so that cooldown's still about 16 seconds away. Gebushi desuited. This is the time for the Deadeye for Um37. Apparently Khan goes down. Oh, I don't like Naga's position here. The McCree is looking straight at him, but the Uprising even things up. They swap to a composition that looked for them pretty bad on Rialto, but it's a different map type, and it feels different for them to play that double shield here on Busan.
Yes, it looked like Paris may have just gotten a little bit high there and gotten off the point. So this is actually probably, I would say maybe worst case here for Paris, in the sense that, Mecha Base is a map where you can play really aggressive with that Reaper setup. You can get the Lucio Moira in the mix, and it looks like that's what Boston bringing out. Potentially IM37 play the McCree, control some of the high ground on the bridge, but we'll see if he decides to go and play the Reaper. As Paris, this is an odd composition. So this is the stuff that we were talking about earlier, where I was saying some teams run like the Lucio with the Orisa, and it's really just kind of disengage, help the Reaper, but this is an odd composition for Boston to have to deal with here.
I'm37 makes an adjustment and picks McCree here. So less frontline, more defensive. It does mean that the Uprising's sort of win condition becomes more diluted, I want to say. Do they want to go forward, or do they want to play around the McCree's defensive capacity? I don't know.
Yeah, and I wonder if Boston wishes they had I'm37 on the Reaper to kick things off. Although it's a very difficult comp to dive, as he goes over to Reaper. As you get on top of the Lucio, or even the Sigma Orisa McCree, you're able to really make them pay with a Reaper. This will be Coalescence on the way in. Stand one gets chunked down really fast. A lot of the players on Boston do, because they need to follow it up.
Can they disengage in time? Looks like they can. The Uprising still had Lucio here, but they probably use Amp speed boost to start that fight. So the presence of the Amp Matrix here is really awkward. Fortunately, Valentine can work around it, go over it, whichever you need. And it's the Coalescence that start the fight for the Boston Uprising. Paris are trying to, they're not playing Echo. This feels like they want to be defensive with the McCree, but also aggressive with the Reaper.
Well, hold on, you can come back here now, as that'll be a duplicate that comes out from Valentine, just trying to put an extra tango on the field as Gebushi gets hit with a Deadeye. Nice dodge. The flashbang there by I'm37. He takes out Onigod, but the point's going to be flipped back to Paris.
Boston have Cole pretty soon. The Moira is going to be a huge point of difference here. It's going to be, at least a key support ultimate every single fight for Boston here. If not every single, every other. And that Primal Rage to work with, which actually, again, is relevant against Baptiste comps. Very relevant.
So Boston will be able to build another Coalescence. You see how much value you get from the Moira,
Yeah.
which is really, I'm surprised that Paris just doesn't play the Moira themselves.
They're like halfway, but they get a foot on either side, I think, with this comp. Naga, though, trying to put his best funky foot forward with the Death Blossom. Nothing there, though. It's going to be a defense matrix to shut down most of that from Gebushi. Myeonbong able to get rid of Khan here, so no Immortality Field would be available after the cooldown, and I'm37 knows that Death Blossom can make a big impact, but they're not ready for the Deadeye! Again, the defensive play from Paris Eternal. I'm37 has to wait here before he can even touch the point. This could be disastrous for Boston, man. That could have ended it.
I mean, how many Deadeye kills is Onigod going to get here? As a Wrecking Ball comes out here from Dawn, as they want to keep stalling this out and keep this going, maybe get it into OT. That'll be Khan using the Amp Matrix as Paris wants to win it here.
Someone has Primal, though. We can really shut down the ability for the Eternal to get value out of this Amplification Matrix, and that's what he's doing. Getting on the safe side of that ultimate, knocking people away from it. A little bit of an overcommitment, perhaps, from the Eternal, but you can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to win right here and now. Boston say no. They get a long fight and plenty of healing from Myeonbong, Matt.
I think that's fine if you're Paris, to be honest. You invested the Amp Matrix. They have to use pretty much everything. Self-destruct, Primal. They ended up using Death Blossom during that fight. And you come back now with your Sound Barrier. That's huge just for the sustain. If you can get Boston to commit and then Sound Barrier, you feel like you're in a huge advantage.
But look at this. The Uprising, I assume they're trying to force an earlier Sound Barrier here. Get some action, and also get some healing from Myeonbong if they just trade early. They get Coalescence as a result of that.
Yeah.
So let's see how they use it. Defensively, of course, Sound Barrier for one, Cole for the other. Dridro looking for potential environmental kills, but no, nothing there. And the Eternal have to disengage. The fact that they build Cole is so big there, Matt. And now it's 64%. The Uprising should still be safe here. They still need to respect Onigod. Primal should hopefully make this a little bit safer for them, but it's all going wrong again! Oh, Stan One has no idea what happened in his backline, Matt. It's all gone wrong for Boston.
It's an Amp Matrix from Khan. That's what happens. And Stan One pushes on through. The Amp Matrix is good enough to start picking players off. Can anyone even make it back for the Boston Uprising? It looks like I'm37 might be able to get a touch. Now you have Valentine jumping on.
The McCree for Onigod has been so huge this series and a huge point of difference in this map. Oh, the walls come down at the wrong time and somehow no one from the Uprising gets caught. It looks like Lady Luck smiles on the Paris Eternal today for more than one reason. But that is beautifully executed stuff there from Paris. Their composition it's weird, but it works well, and the Uprising have no responses to it. Man, that McCree looks so good.
And it's such a huge win for the Paris Eternal. It is also a big squandered opportunity, though, for Boston. We talked about how poor they were in the May Melee. They start off 2-0, 3-0 for both series, a 6-0 map count. An opportunity to win here against Paris, who just brought in a new off-tank. It feels like off the street the other day. And they give up this series and now put their chances at knockouts completely up in the air. This is a real tough loss for Boston, but Paris, they really brought it today. You know, if they can really start to lock down some of those Winston-based compositions, they're going to be pretty scary.
What a confidence boost for the Eternal. And even more importantly than them sort of winning the series overall is that they're finding success with compositions that aren't just the same old thing that everybody is playing. I have no idea what to call this sort of... It felt like the Lucio Baptiste rush minus the Reinhardt. You had McCree Reaper, so you want to play in the front line, but you also want to have defensive options. Honestly, it looked greedy. It just looks... Some of these comps from Paris look greedy. They're just trying to take the best of all their favorite components of certain comps and push them, you know, mix them all together. but it worked out. And I have to say, Matt, one of the big reasons why that worked at all was because of our play of the match today, presented by Xfinity, and it's Only God. Struggling to find sort of glory, I'd say, on the Dallas Fuel. He looks right at home on the Paris Eternal, and getting to see him play so much McCree so effectively was great. His Widowmaker on Rialto also was incredibly punishing.
Yeah, it was really the McCree, though. The amount of times like we would see him end up with like a Deadeye, and you really wouldn't think anything of it, but being able to get like 2 kills at a time with Deadeyes, and then also the Widowmaker here on Volskaya was huge. So Onigod and Naga really brought it today. I thought really everybody for Paris stepped up in a big way in a series where you absolutely needed them to. Boston is a team that's looked really good thus far, looking to potentially make it into knockouts, and you come in today and you take care of business if you're Paris.
Yeah, Paris Eternal, if you're a fan of this team, you're loving things right now. They bring in some spice, some unexpected takes on the composition. They have 2 incredible DPS players. Their latest addition at off-tank is really paying off. You got a young prodigy there from France in that sort of main support position. You've got all the ingredients to really cook up quite a season here, and it's not too late to make a real run for it. This takes this team up to 3-4 overall. Very, very good result for the Paris Eternal here, and proof of concept that it's not, again, it's not just Double Shield, it's not just the Winston Reaper setups that can win. You can mix and match these compositions, and if you're good enough to execute them correctly, the world's your oyster. Even when we have 4 heroes out of rotation, there's still plenty of room for creativity.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of different creative comes for the Paris Eternal today. I don't know. They're going to have to play some type of Winston. We see everybody else in the league playing it. But, you add that Winston into the mix. Maybe it's something where the Winston and the Diva, Vistola obviously new to the roster. Maybe you don't want to play that as much early on. But if you can get that down for Paris, you're looking really strong.
And we're going to go to a break. But when we come back, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to hear briefly from Dan with some words on how the Eternal have overcome this latest foe, as well as Khan's sort of insectoid intruder. And when we return, of course, there'll be more Overwatch League here as we get closer and closer to the June Joust. It is heating up.
Coca-Cola is the official refreshment of the Overwatch League.
Welcome to Game Break presented by Pringles. We're joined now by Don from Paris Eternal. Don, congratulations on your big win. How are you feeling?
Happy. Really happy.
Awesome. All right. Well, to start off, I know that you've been playing with Elivote as your off tank this season until recently, and now we just saw you play with the Paris Eternal's newest off tank, Vestola. Is that how you pronounce his name? Sorry, I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Vestola. Vestola. Yes, Vestola. How has that been for you?
It was super short notice, so we all miss Ellie a lot. But Vestola is super good, and he's like a good replacement. And he fitted into the team really well. So I'm happy about that on such short notice, because we only had a couple days with him, actually. It was a big surprise to all of us, but I'm happy with him.
Right. I know you mentioned that this is, it was very sudden, and I'm sure you guys didn't have much time to sort of practice a lot, but is there like a big difference between how Vestola plays and how Elivote used to play? And is there something that you had to sort of like change your own play style for that?
Well, I think I didn't change it that much, but I do notice the difference in them as players. I think Vestola is better at heroes like Sigma, more mechanically better at Sigma, and Ellie better at Diva. And I think also Ellie is more talkative, but Vestola is a bit more quiet, and he talks when it's really important, which are just small differences, but yeah.
All right, well, thank you. Moving on, so today I think it was really interesting to sort of see you flex on a lot of different heroes. I think we saw you play Wrecking Ball and control, of course, Winston, and also I think we saw you on Roadhog as well on Volskaya. Yeah. Was this sort of a way to sort of counter Boston's composition, or was it part of the team strategy?
Yeah, we noticed after the first map that they were the better mirror team on the meta comp, the Rush comp. But like I felt like the viewers, they weren't very good at adapting to our kind of like comps that no one else really plays. And I'm quite strong on a lot of heroes. That's probably my biggest strength. So I just picked in the moment what I thought would work, and it worked.
All right, interesting. And one more question. Of course, Paris, with today's win, you guys are one step closer to being qualified into the knockout rounds, but you guys still have one more match against the LA Gladiators later this week. Is there like a specific player that you're looking out for from the LA Gladiators? And if there is, what's your reason?
Yeah, of course, Kevster, because he's from Europe. He's kind of Europe's little pride, Europe's little baby. So yeah, of course, want to take him down.
All right. Well, I'm actually looking forward to your match against the LA Gladiators. Don, thank you so much for the interview, and good luck with your match. Okay?
Thank you, Danny. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, let's head back to the desk.
Thank you so much, Danny and Don. Congratulations to the Paris Eternal, and kind of love that response there. I want to take down Europe's little baby. That's what that was my takeaway from that interview. Yeah, let's take a quick look at the June Joust standings, because quite frankly, Paris's victory, that puts pressure on Dallas now, as they now leapfrogged them as the current final seed in the knockout round. So things just got a little more spicy. I like it. I dig it. But I wanna talk about this match, and because of course I wanna toss it to you. You did predict the Paris Eternal to, run away with it, and it came down to the wire. It was a close one, and not the cleanest series either. There was a lot